Right. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the greatest combat sports and culture of the entire universe, the Fight Podcast. Man, today, as always, man, bright and early, man, we have an amazing show. So today, I'm bringing on this dude, man, returning guest to the show. Um, I want to talk boxing. There's so much incredible boxing going on, and who else would I bring on, man, other than this guy he's a DAZN TV personality. Has an amazing show, Ak and Barack on Sirius XM. Without further ado, man, we're gonna go ahead and bring Ak Reyes on the show, man. Ak, brother,
Th-
what it do, man? Welcome to the Fight Podcast, bro.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the introduction, man. What's going on with you?
Oh, bro. Well, first and foremost, man, thank you as always for joining me on the show, man. And like I said, bro, it's boxing is finally back. We
But
had Fight Island and MMA. Eddie Hearn said, "Damn that, we gonna throw this in my backyard. We gonna really show everybody up." Um, it feels good to have combat sports back, man. Now that it's in the back, in the scheme of things, back in the swing, man. How have you felt in just being involved in this?
well, I mean, yes, Barack and I never stopped working during this pandemic. On the show on Sirius and the Zone. So for a while, we were interviewing, people from all walks of life, like R&B artists, actors, everybody in between. I mean, we enjoyed doing that as well. But it was great. It was great to finally have some boxing to talk about, even though not the big fights that everybody's excited to see yet. But nevertheless, we got the ball rolling, so I was happy about it.
I love that, man. And talking about that, we are getting the smaller, not as big. That Virgil Ortiz, yes, your George Stevenson, you're having those names, but we're finally starting to see some of the bigger names. In your estimation, why do you think it's taken this long to get like bigger names back? Because again, we look at across the aisle in terms of MMA, you're big names going. And I want to see what just your thoughts on why we haven't seen some of the bigger names in boxing finally surface.
Well, I mean, that's an easy answer. It's just pandemic, coronavirus, and pay cuts. So these fighters are, these promoters are losing a ton of money at the gate. So the bigger fights, like the Canelos, the AJs, and Triple G fights, those fights make a lot of money at the gate. So if you're eliminating millions of dollars at the gate, that's going to affect your card. So there are a lot of conversations being had with promoters, networks, and fighters about pay cuts. A lot of fighters are not okay with it, and that's what's really been preventing. Because you got to think about it. Guys that 4-round, 6-round fighters that haven't been fighting for the last 4 months, those dudes need the money. They need to fight. So you can get those guys on the ESPN cards. They're not turning anything down. But these fighters that are well off, they have room and a heavy bank kind enough to turn fights down until they get what they want.
Absolutely. So we have again, and everything. The pandemic slowed everything. It was for yourself, man. Again, being in New York, it was crazy everywhere. Shit, it's still crazy everywhere. How has that been? Again, well, that our business is combat sport. Vaccine. You guys had to pretty much get
Right.
you working around it, man. How has it been for you?
I mean, well, for those that don't know, Barack and I both contracted coronavirus. So
Oh shit.
we're affected by it like late March, early April. So during that time, 2 weeks of bad symptoms, I still had to work and do the show. Barack as well. Not too many people know about it. I mean, I did post about it on IG once on Instagram, but it was tough for the first couple of weeks, and obviously being isolated in your home, for upwards of 40 days without really stepping out too much. It was tough, man, just like it was for everybody. Big adjustments, you know what I mean? But I did. It was a great time to reflect and show gratitude and appreciate and the things that we do have in life. So, I mean, I guess it was all part of God's plan. It's not all positive, but there's some good to it.
Absolutely. Well, dude, first of all, man, I'm sorry you had that. Dude. That's terrible. I mean, I know I've had a couple buddies who've had it. It sounds bad. Now, I'm staying inside with my air purifiers and purified angle. Have you been able to drain it off? And like I said, you see, you got the heavy bag. Still been able to get in there and kind of mix it up a little bit.
No. I mean, in the building I live, there's a gym that hasn't opened yet because in the New York, tri-state area, there's still We're still not back to normal, nowhere near. So a lot of indoor facilities, especially gyms, are still closed. So I've gone to the park here and there, but I have to be honest, last 4 months I haven't done much. I haven't done shit, pretty much. You know what I mean? I'm cooking, a lot of eating. I've gained some weight. That's what the hell has happened.
Yeah, I feel like that's been most of us. Um, so let's go ahead and just jump into some boxing, man. We have a lot of people always talk about the young guys, right? And I'm really interested in your thoughts. Everyone always talks about like essentially the four horsemen: Stevenson, Ryan Garcia's, you have Teofimo Lopez. Out of those crop of guys, I think they all have hella potential. Um, One, do you think there's anybody being missed out at
I mean,
guys?
well, I mean, you have to put Virgil Ortiz in there, who's only 22 years old, if I'm not mistaken. There are other young guys, but in regards to the guys that to the guys that are getting the most light, I would say those four guys. But I would throw Virgil Ortiz in there as well.
All right, I agree with you. I think he's actually one of those dudes that going to be a problem at 47 days. I think he might be too big for the weight class. He might up, but he bless you. He seems like the one who is a real problem. Me personally, out of all of them though, huge fan of them doing. Um,
Yeah.
Seeing what he's gonna go in the future, do you think there's a possibility that we'll actually see that actual matchup between him and Ryan Garcia in the new?
I think that you know the climate that we're in today, in where people are starting to realize that nothing is guaranteed. We don't know what the hell is ahead of us. I think promoters, networks, and fighters are taking heed to that, and there'll be more, you know, inclined to make fights happen if the opportunity presents itself. So I do agree. I mean, I do feel that fight eventually will happen, but there's so many moving parts because you got guys that are young, like you mentioned, so they're growing. One of those guys out that bunch might have to move up in weight because he can't make the weight anymore. Obviously, their network, barriers and things of that nature that'll prevent the fight. But I think, post coronavirus, I think that it's going to be once we get to a point where fighters accept the purchase that, and I'm not one to tell the fighter what he's worth, right? But once the agreements start to happen, I think more big fights will happen. I like all of those guys. They all have great attributes. You know what I mean? I can't even tell you who's better than the other.
Oh, absolutely. It's fun. I think those, especially with those four guys, this is fun. It's always fun to have the conversation because all of them are so talented. And I think it is one of those clear cut, like, all right, these are the kind of top guys, who are going to bring on the next of boxing. With that being said, it's interesting to me that we're starting to see more of a trend in boxing. I think because of Floyd and just the business of boxing, at one point in time, it was essentially stacked the record. Now, granted, I'm a big proponent saying Floyd fought monsters when he was Pretty Boy Floyd, and I think people don't credit for that. But it seems like they're starting to give more people are fighting a better competition earlier in their career. That trend actually starting to take place in boxing.
I mean, I think that their promoters that always have done that. Like, Bob Arum, he knew how to. He's always known how to test fighters when it was time for them to be tested against better opposition. He did it with Floyd himself. He did it with Oscar. He did it with Miguel Cotto. So I think that's always existed. I think now, with the zone being in the picture now and showing a lot of the undercards. When they first came out, they were showing the whole card, so that was a little too much. But now they're still showing young fighters, so it's all subjective. Like there could be a fighter that an opponent that comes in as an opponent as a B-side for a prospect that nobody knows that has a losing record, but is tough as nails. And sometimes when you look at a fighter's record, right? When you look at a young fighter's prospect's record, you look at a lot of losing records, and that doesn't always tell the tale. A lot of times you got journeymen that have more losses than wins, and they're tougher than some of these other young, fighters. So you have to watch the fights. You have to see who they're fighting, and to determine if these guys are being tested. But I do see that more often. I think the promoters are more, they know that. Listen, we have to know early if this guy has the goods. We have to know early before we pour his money into this guy, get the opportunity. So it's just business.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense, man. But like, I know, I guess people looking at it as a fan type perspective, they're like, man, I would love to see like these top prospect really kind of like build off each other. But you see that's not happening.
It doesn't make sense at all, because if you want a sport that's going to have many stars, boxing is a star-driven sport, right? This is it's what the casual fans want. So you don't want one of these guys to take it out early in their career, and because now that stigma of not being undefeated, I hate to say it, but Floyd, brought that culture into boxing. So a lot of these guys were afraid to take big risks because they didn't want that loss on their record. So if I was a promoter, I'm not going to put my young undefeated prospect, another prospect, before, until it's title shot time, but no, it doesn't make sense. It's not the right business.
I feel you with that one. All right, so let's talk about some other prospects real quick, man. New York dude, man, Edgar Berlanga, man.
Yeah.
He's 14-0, 14 knockouts, all in the first round. Do Puerto Rico and New York have one?
Yeah, there's a possibility that we do. He still has to be tested, but he's passing every test so far with flying colors, and you want to see more of him. But unfortunately, he's getting guys out of there in the first round, so we can't see what else he has to offer. I know his background and his team. He comes from good stock, like good trainers. His father's heavily in his life, and a lot of other people that has worked with him along the way. So, an exceptional talent. The jury's still out if he's going to be, the next Miguel Cotto. But as me, as a fellow Puerto Rican, obviously I would hope so, and I'm rooting for him.
As a fellow Puerto Rican, I was jumping up and down, pulling my flag out the last time, man. I was uber excited, man. I felt like it was the Puerto Rican Day Parade, and my man went out there and did it. Now, let me ask you this, because he is one of those guys that we're looking at and saying, okay, I would love to see him get better competition. Me personally, I would like to see him with somebody like one of the Jarrell brothers. The reason I bring them up is because obviously it's the weight class, but he's the guy who is probably down in his career, and he'll be a great opportunity. And that's how you get network. Find out he has a little bit of name recognition. Somebody who knows where respect is tough. He actually gets that. Then off to.
Well, they have a plan. They want him to go out a couple more times, and then next year around June, around the Puerto Rican Day Parade, they want him to headline the card and maybe in the theater at the Garden, possibly against like a Gabriel Rosado or one of those guys who's another Puerto Rican and obviously has proven himself to be a hell of a tough fighter. So that's a great test.
That you're talking about with the records that I might look at and say, hey, this is the best record, but he's sponsored.
Exactly. So I think that would be a good. Now, I'm not even saying that he would beat Rosado. That would be his biggest test to prove that he is on that path to stardom. So I think they're going to test him at the right time.
And so now let me ask you this. Okay, again, thank you so much for your time, brother. We appreciate it. Are there any matchups that are upcoming that you really forward?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Charlo Derevchenko. I think that's a hell of a fight. I think that, as much as I like Leo Santa Cruz, I think that Gervonta Davis is just far too talented for him. I don't think that fight is going to be as competitive as a lot of people are saying. Now, I'm not saying he's going to walk through Leo. I think Leo is a high volume puncher. I think that just the skill level, it's just they're too far apart, and I think that fight is going to be one sided. But the Dervish is the one that's most intriguing to me as of now. And outside of that, obviously the biggest fight is Errol Spence Jr. versus Danny Garcia, which is a fight I'm not only excited about, I'm nervous about it. I'm friends with both guys, and I think it's going to be a fireworks all night.
Oh man, I'm glad you brought both of those fights up. Actually, I think it was amazing when I first heard. I mean, even hearing like Steve Kim of ESPN saying that he expects late stoppage Garcia. Do you think people are pretty much already discounting Errol Spence because of his last performance, because of the accident? They're like, oh, he's probably going to be washed. Do you think we're kind of overlooking Spence and how great he actually is?
Well, maybe some people. I'm not. So I think Errol is an exceptional talent. He now, yes, there's a slight doubt in people's minds because of the car accident. Like, how is he going to come back after being in that type of accident? He's been acting a little different lately. Not bad, just different. And maybe he's had an awakening, and maybe he'll be better than ever, right? So kudos to him for actually coming back against a Danny Garcia, who's one of the top welterweights in the world. No tune-up fight, no soft touch. His confidence level obviously is still high. And I'm not looking past Errol at all. I think a lot of people are bringing up that accident. But with that being said, should Danny win, as he expects to, hopefully we don't hear any excuses about the accident, because Errol is, put his hat into the mix for this fight. So no excuses. But no, I don't think we're going to see a Errol that's washed up or that's affected by the accident. I think it's a blockbuster fight.
I agree, man. And also, again, speaking of blockbuster fights, that Charlo Jevchenko fight, I mean, to me, that's one of the most competitive fights. If people don't know who Jevchenko is, that fight that he had against Golovkin, I mean, I had him winning personally. I mean, it was a great fight. Yeah, so that fight itself, if Charlo does get through Jevchenko, do you think he'll finally start getting some of those love to the Canelos of the world, even Boo Boo Andre, like any of those? I would love to.
I sure hope so. I think that and if he should win convincingly, I think that he will finally get credit for a big win, because people know how dangerous Jevchenko is. Close fight with Danny Jacobs. A lot of people felt he beat Golovkin. So I think that Charlo would finally get that credit of, all right, he's fighting elite fighters now. Not that he hasn't fought credible fighters, but there's still, for a lot of people, the jury's still out on him. I think he's a great talent. I think that he is one of the best middleweights of the world. One of the fights that I want to see is him against Canelo Alvarez. So it's a dangerous fight for him, and I'm excited that he took the fight.
And so a couple more. Stone is back. You got full action, man. How has that been with everything? How has it been the team to kind of start getting back into boxing?
Well, I mean, again, like I said earlier, for Barack and myself, we didn't skip a beat. We've been the Ak and Barack show on Sirius XM Monday through Friday has been on since November 2019, which, might I add, it's the first ever daily boxing show on a national platform in boxing.
Congratulations.
Right. So thank you. So the show is going to be simulcast on DAZN, and right before we started to set up the studio at Sirius XM with the DAZN cameras, pandemic happened. So because of the lack of content, the boxing content, DAZN set up the studio in my home, and we never skipped a beat. So we don't know what it is to stop working. We haven't been working since with DAZN since 2018. So we've never stopped. Grateful for that. So the things, the production teams that go out to do fights, those people were home and on vacations or not working at all. So they had to make adjustments. But with us, honestly, we never stopped working. So nothing has changed. Yeah, the only thing, obviously, we're not traveling to fight. So we missed the fight weeks that we broadcast live from in Vegas and, in New York. So that we missed. But honestly, I'm waking up at 6:30 every morning. So not so.
So let me ask you this: for the fights itself, how has it been for you without an actual audience, like no crowd? How is that
Watch.
experience?
It's been slightly different, but not as bad as I assumed it would be. So I felt like it would affect me a great deal not seeing the audience there. But being engaged in the actual fight and the combat, it didn't affect me as much. So shout to all of those networks, ESPN, DAZN, Showtime, who are creating these events without audience. Obviously, Matchroom did an amazing job out there in the UK in this yard. I think they're doing as much, as can be done, to create a boxing show with no spectators. So I'm enjoying it, man. I have no complaints about it.
Oh, bro, you
We're
hit
living.
every shot. One of those things that I think people opportunity to sit back and say, "Oh shit, this is like." Man. All right, we're gonna get you out of here with this, man. I always had to ask you about music. During the pandemic, hip hop has been taking on brothers battles. Honestly, I think it had one of the.
Right.
What music have you been rocking to?
One of the guys artists that I really enjoy goes by the name of Russ from Atlanta. REYES. So he's one of the guys that I've been listening to throughout this time. I'm a big Jay-Z fan. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, so I always listen to old.
Let him know.
But I would say, and I'm a Drake guy, and it's not because people say I look like the guy, but I'm Drake fan. So I listen to Drake, Jay-Z, Russ. I think that's been, and I'm a Sinatra guy, so I always listen to Frank Sinatra,
man. Man, my man had to smooth it out at the end. There it is.
For sure.
Well, look, Russ is dope. I think a lot of cats don't pay attention to Russ. I actually started just paying attention. So Blue has some bangers. You New York guy, what do you think about Griselda, like Benny the Butcher and all?
I mean, I just come from a different era, but I can appreciate those guys. They're all good. Now, I'm not one of the guys that throws shots at a lot of these new artists and stuff like that.
Oh no, I'm with you. There's a lot of good music. I think hip hop for the yo, man. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, man. I really do appreciate your time as always. Where can people find you guys?
Well, listen, you can follow myself at Boxing with Ak on Instagram. You can follow my co-host Barack, the Boxing Bully. You can watch us on DAZN and listen on SiriusXM, man.
And well, thank you so much for joining me on the show today, dude. I can't wait to do this at some point again. And when this all ends up, like I said, man, I gotta go to New York and see you guys in one of these fights.
No doubt, man. Thanks for having me. Take it easy, brother.
And that was Ak from Ak and Barack, man. Thanks as always for joining me on the show, man. Dude is amazing, man. A lot of fun. Super interesting dude, man. And again, their show, for me personally, one of the biggest reasons why I ended up starting this show for representation there and actually do a combat sports. These were some of the first guys that actually really type of vibe. I'm from Chicago, big fan of what they really understand the sport of boxing, trust their perspective, outlook. Much love to Ak and Barack, both of them. Much love to REYES for joining us on the show today. That being said, man, this is episode 224 of the greatest combat sports and culture show in the entire Universe to Fight podcast.